up, Trail Trash Podcast listeners and friends? We are here tonight with the legendary, and I say that because I mean it, the legendary b- first, and as far as we know, only blind and deaf runner to finish Badwater 135. We are sitting here with Aaron Hale tonight. Aaron, how are you tonight?
What's up, my man? I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, doing all right. Hey, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out and talk to us trashy runners here. And I say trashy because that's, John's the most accomplished one out of us, and the rest of us just like to bring up the rear. So we keep it trashy, not classy. We'll put it that way. So,
I,
um, yeah.
excuse me. I think I told you in an earlier conversation that all of the qualifying 100 milers I
Hmm.
did to get myself into Badwater. Not a single one of them did I finish with more than 30 minutes to spare. So I'm right there in the same crowd.
There you go. There you go. Power to the back of the pack. So here's the party pace is what we'll call it. Yeah, we're the party pacers. So,
Why
all right.
rush things?
Right, yeah, you don't get to enjoy as much. So, you get to suffer as much, I guess. You don't get to pick over all the aid station leftovers.
Hmm.
They might.
I'm here for the scenery.
So speaking of aid stations, let's just kind of go into that because it's a convenient thing. With your history, being a personal chef to a three-star admiral in the Navy, which we can talk about that if you want, how you don't just luck into that, I don't think. You don't just happen to meet a guy and say, "Hey, I can cook some good burgers. Uh, you want me to cook you one?" And the next thing you know, you're touring around Italy with him. Um, when it comes to aid stations, do you make your own food or do you just pick off what they have, or how does that work? And if they're making something and knowing your kitchen skill set, does it maybe not taste as good as something, or would you sit there and say, I may have put a little more of this in there, or maybe a little more of that? Or do you make your own food?
You know what? Even to the most highly trained chef, which I am not, uh, hunger is the best spice, right?
Hmm.
So I on a on the road, I will eat anything and everything, but sometimes I don't even know what's there. So, my crew, my guide, pacers, they'll just say, hey, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. What do we got? I don't want to. And it is so funny. Our buddy Bob Moore was guiding me for the what was it, Canal Corridor in Akron. And it was the middle of the night. It was freezing cold. We get to an aid station. He goes, "You want pierogies?" I'm like, what? Yeah, I want pierogies. You want some bacon? Yes.
Yeah.
So it comes with one of those like paper boat, like the fry boats, and it's got these pierogies and they're just dripping with grease. He's like, I had them dip the pierogies in the bacon grease. Like, I love you, man.
Uh, Don't tell my
Um,
doctor that I would love to try that. So I'm not supposed to. He'll be mad. But hey,
Based on some of the pre-race chatter, it sounds like Garrett's ready to stuff his running shorts with some of that fudge and kind of use that for fuel.
I mean, it probably would keep really well. It tastes really good. I'd probably have to eat it earlier when I have the energy to chew than, than later in the race when I don't want to chew. Aaron, you are.
Hold on a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
John just said you're going to stuff your shorts with fudge. I honestly think we may have hit an all-time low on this show with that comment right there. I'm just going to move on sorry, I had to say it.
So we fly by the seat of our pants. See what I did there?
Hmm.
So yeah. But yeah, so you are now a fudge chef. Are they chefs or are they bakers? I don't know if that's if with it confections. Is that
Yeah,
more of a
I'd say technically I am a chocolatier slash confectioner.
confectioner? So all right. Well anyway, your fudge is divine. It's everything that every other fudge wishes it could be. So I will put it that way and I will leave it at that. It is worth everything. So kudos to you for that. So let's just go ahead and dive right on in because I really want to know the Badwater story. Why? What of all the races in the world? Why Badwater? That one is nowhere near anywhere of my I might run that race one day lists. It's on my I will probably never try to run this race list. And
Yeah,
yet
that's
here
definitely
you
on my
are.
no thank you list.
Yeah. And then here you are. You're just like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. How did you settle on of all races, Badwater?
I've never been afraid of taking on a challenge. I mean, I went from joining the Navy to switching over to Army bomb tech. So the guy that gets in the bomb suit, the hurt locker dude. Uh, and then I could get injured, lose my eyesight. 4 years later, lose my hearing,
Hmm.
and in that whole process, I decided that I was going to become a mountain climber and a marathon runner and a whitewater kayaker. I lose my hearing, and I do what anybody in my situation would do: start a chocolate company. I
Sounds
mean,
natural.
you know, it's definitely a very linear progression,
Hmm.
but it was I forget exactly when I even learned about Badwater, but I think it was on my path towards my first marathons, and this was about 2013 or so. I lost my eyesight. I was blown up in 2011, and it took me a while to recover, learn how to be blind. But I was terrified of being stuck, like trapped by my condition, right?
Hmm.
Afraid of leaving the house. So I just kind of research what other blind people were doing. And there was a few names that kept popping up, like Eric Weinmeyer's the first blind person to climb Mount Everest.
Hmm.
And, I looked him up and I went mountain climbing with him. And Lonnie Bedwell, another Navy guy, and he's the first blind person to kayak the entire Grand Canyon. So I looked him up and I went kayaking with him. And there's a guy named Ivan Castro who stayed on active duty as an Army Ranger after losing his eyesight. And I figured, if these guys could do this amazing stuff, of course, Ivan wasn't like, kinetic. He became a recruiter for special operations. And I called him up, and in one conversation, he told me that he makes it a point every year to run the Marine Corps Marathon, the Army 10 miler, and the Air Force Marathon. And I thought, that's super patriotic and cool. I think I'll do that too. So I registered for all three of them. And then I live in here in the Florida Panhandle, and somebody said you gotta run a local marathon, a little thing,
Hmm.
instead of these big races. And I signed up for the Pensacola, a nice cozy little marathon. And then some nonprofit, a veteran service organization, calls me up and says, "Hey, we'll foot your airfare, room and board, and registration, all that, if you want to come run for us in San Antonio for the Rock and Roll Marathon." I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So before I even thought about it, I was running 4 marathons and a 10 miler all within the span of 4 months. And I hadn't run
That's
anything longer than a 10K in my life. So, yeah, I needed a coach.
hmm.
Start training. Anyways, along the way, I was I was running these marathons, which I had never even considered before losing my eyesight. And I heard about people that go even further than 26.2 miles, blew my mind. And it opened my world up to all these other tests and challenges. And I'm definitely down for a challenge.
Hmm.
And it's one of the you got to be one of those guys, right? you see Everest or you know, imagine cross country skiing to the South Pole, or you know, doing a rim to rim, you know, all these wild ass, you know, challenges, and they'd like pick your, you know, your ears up. You're like, what? That sounds like so much fun. Where everybody else is like, that's nuts. And I guess I'm one of those guys. Uh,
Welcome to the club.
so I heard about Badwater. I was nowhere near, you know, like that level. But you know, I hadn't run an ultra yet. So
Hmm.
uh, I found a coach to do that. I run my first few marathons, and then unfortunately I contracted meningitis. I lost my hearing in 2015. I was pretty much out of commission for a whole year. But then 2016, I kind of made my comeback a year after the meningitis. I ran the Akron Marathon, my hometown marathon. Uh, and it just happened to be the week of my 20th high school reunion.
Hmm.
And I came back after my second near-death experience and got my very first sub 4 hour race. And
Nice.
you know, still a PR. Yeah, because after that, I'm like, I'm gonna go longer. And I ran, I think it was my first 12 hour. And then I set my sights. It was like, okay, I'm an ultra runner. I'm going for Badwater. And then I just started checking off a couple, you know, 300 milers and a few of these other things. And that's how I started to make my journey towards Badwater.
Got it. And you kind of, I don't want to say lucked into bad water, but you almost kind of lucked into Badwater because at one of your 100-mile finishes, wasn't someone from Badwater at that particular race? Do I remember that correct from another interview?
Say that again.
When you was someone from Badwater at one of your one of your 100-mile finishes? Is that how you kind of got a foot in the door to Badwater? Because
Well,
they wouldn't let you
um,
run one of the 100-milers.
I
Was that
told you.
Keys?
Well, yeah, yeah. I told you that I'd run the Akron Canal Corridor 100,
Hmm.
also my hometown, which is a very easy, flat. It's along the Ohio Erie Canal. It's
Oh, okay.
all like it's like the towpath of the old canal system. So it's super flat. It's all crushed limestone, no road, virtually none, and it was actually pretty cool. So it's definitely not a good starter for,
No.
you know, not very good preparation for Badwater. But that was my first 100.
Hmm.
Then it was my second 100. But I knew I needed to do something good and hot. So I signed up for Daytona,
Hmm.
which, you know, was the last couple of years was taken over by Bob Becker,
Oh,
who
okay.
is good friends with uh, Chris Kosman, and who's finished Badwater maybe, well, I think it's 7 times.
Sounds about right.
But I said like that. But Bob Becker's also a student of my coach. So, yeah, Ultra World is a small world. I signed up for Daytona. I ran that. It wasn't super hot. I mean, it's Florida. It's definitely humid, but it was early December. I mean, it still got a little bit hot. The worst part was the humidity. You just, I was just dripping wet the entire time. So it was super miserable.
That air you
And
can wear. So,
yeah, I couldn't dry off. I tore my feet to shreds. But
mhm.
I finished with less than 30 minutes to spare. And at the very, I met, even though Chris Kosman met me at the finish, but I actually met him, at packet pickup or a couple days earlier. But the first thing, he was like the first one to congratulate me, and he says, "Hey, you're applying for Badwater, aren't you?" Yeah, like after what I just experienced, screw you, dude. Yeah, but yeah, like that's part of the reason I'm doing this is so I can, go challenge myself with Badwater.
Got it. So you just wanted
So,
the hardest challenge, which would be Badwater. No, that I can think of.
after that first 100-mile experience, how did you feel after that? Did you just immediately want to go run another 100 miles, or were you just like trashed?
Well, all right, you know how it goes, right? Same like every ultra I run, every mountain so you climb, it's like before and after. You're like, I can't wait for the next one. I can't wait for this one. They're all awesome. When you're on the side of the mountain, when you're in the middle of that ultra, you're like, well, how did I talk myself into this again?
Right?
And
And
as
then you're
soon
never
as
doing it again till the
yeah,
next one.
never again. I don't know why, but yeah, at the very end, the finish line, I'm like, that sucks so bad. But give it a few, like I say a few days, give me 20 minutes. Yeah, sign me up.
Yep, we're back on ultra sign up before we leave the finish line. So yeah.
Hmm.
So, so you get to Badwater and you have this unfortunate event happen where you cannot use what you have trained with. Well, and let me stop there because someone had asked at work. Um, I had been asking around some people at work, so because not everyone runs like we do, like we are in the rarity, if you will. And so I've asked some people, hey, I'm talking to this guy. He's done this and this. As a non-runner, what kind of things would you like to hear? And someone asked, how do you pick your pacers? How do you pick the friends that you run with? Do you just say, hey, you owe me a favor and this is the favor I'm cashing in? And do you have to train with them? Do you have to build up rapport? I mean, obviously, I would assume that you have to build some sort of trust level. Or do you just have one pacer that does all of these with you?
None of that's true. Maybe a bit brazen, maybe a little careless. I don't know. But one of the things that I developed when I was in the military was a trust for the people to my left and right. Right. I I had to put my life in other people's hands. I had to trust them to, watch my six.
Hmm.
So it was pretty easy for me to, you know, run shoulder to shoulder with somebody and have them be my eyes. So the way we normally run, and it's fairly straightforward. I just use this little tether. Um, it could be anything, a t-shirt, a sock, whatever. In fact, I started with a one of those dog tug of war rope, little toys, 6 inches with a fat knot on either end. I would hold a knot, my guide would hold a knot, and we would just run side by side, holding on to this dog toy. Since had somebody sew just a piece of nylon webbing, like a backpack strap, with a couple loops, just big enough to fit about 3 fingers in there. And I'll hold one loop. My guide will hold another loop. It won't be more than 6 inches apart. And that's how we run, shoulder to shoulder. And I get all my cues we through the entire run through that little tether. If I need to pick up my feet, there's a crack in the sidewalk, a curb or whatever, my guy just kind of gradually picks up the tether, and it's like a marionette string. I start high stepping it, and that's it. If we have to go single file, my guide takes that tether and swings it back behind his or her back like they're trying to hide me. And I just run behind them with my arm straight out in front of me, which isn't sustainable. But if we got to get around, somebody in a narrow spot or
Mhm.
whatever. So what you were talking about when we got to Badwater, well, first, uh, that's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. There's not like a whole lot of training. There's not a real learning curve to that. If you're a runner and here, hold on to this. All right, go. Some people are more nervous than others. People will like jerk on the tether, and that's like my sign to jump. Like, oh geez, but there's a snake in the road or something. But
Mhm.
um, otherwise, we just chat, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's not much to it. So if somebody's going out for a run, I'm like, hey, can I come with you? Yeah, sure. How do we do it? Well, I'll teach you on the fly. And when it comes to pacers and guides, it's just, the one thing about being blind and being, well, for anything, everything becomes a team sport, right? So the most difficult part is finding people that can match my distance or pace to go running with. Or I just got to get the miles in however I can. So I'll go out for 10 miles with somebody on the road, and I'll go their pace. And then I'll come back and get on the treadmill for another 20 or 30 or whatever that, for my long run day if I have to.
Mhm.
So when we got to Badwater, about we got there 2 days early because of course uh, I've only met one person on the entire team, and including my coach, who I've been working with for like 10 years. We'd never met in person, but it was Lisa Smith Batchin was my coach.
Okay.
Uh, it had Vincent Antunes, Mr. Trail Toes, on the team, and Kathy Akazinski, who just completed Marathon de Sable
Oh, okay.
in last April.
Cool.
So, and then my local friend, another Army retired Army Ranger, and most frequent training partner. I invited him along, David Kelly, and he just knew me and my running style the best. So we get there to was it Furnace Creek, the national park, and first it was hilarious. I've been training for months. I've been running in Florida for years, and mostly when I want to train for heat, I just go out to my treadmill in my garage, and I
Mhm.
leave the garage door shut, and that thing's like one of those, ancient era like prison sweat lodges, sweat huts. The heat just radiates in there, and it's so miserable. Yeah, so I've been training for months in that, in the devil's jockstrap. I get to I get to Death Valley, and the first time we all like lace up and go for just like a 2 mile, 5 mile shakeout run. Everybody standing outside the doors. And I was just waiting for it. I knew it was coming. Man, this is hot. And I was just grinning from ear to ear. I'm going, yeah, but it's a dry heat.
No.
But the first thing we learned was that there was no way we were going to run single file or run shoulder to shoulder. It was going to be single file the whole way. And of course, we instantly knew there's no way that I could do the tether thing that I've been running for like 11 years, 12
Mhm.
years, just well, with this tether, uh, side by side, elbow to elbow. And you couldn't because you had to stay outside. You had to stay to the left of the white line. And it's all on the road. And there's only about a foot and a half between the white line and the edge of the pavement, and then it's just scree. And
Mhm.
so it's either, my guide run in the dirt the whole way while I'm running, on the pavement, and we switch from time to time, or we had to figure something else out. So we all collectively put our heads together and we came up with this really neat idea. And I don't know if I've actually invented this method or just independently discovered it, but I brought my trekking poles I used to go into the mountains with, and it, we taped the tips of the poles right to the Pacers uh, Pacers bib belt.
Okay.
And I held the handles and followed behind my guide with the poles straight out ahead of me. And one thing we did, we also, because I'm deaf, completely deaf, both my ears are turned off, except for this one cochlear implant. If it weren't for this one cochlear implant, I'd be pulling the full Helen Keller. So, and the worst part about that, I mean, yes, it's kind of like trying to figure out what's going on inside the kitchen through a drive-through speaker. But when there's just the slightest breeze over the microphones in this thing, it's like trying to talk to somebody in a convertible with a top down. So uh, we also needed to develop a whole new communication system because we couldn't do that little tether thing, and they
Hmm.
couldn't just talk right into my ear because we're, single file. So somebody went out to the store, bought a whistle, and it was like one blast, one tweet, whatever, for walk, two for run, three for stop. That was it. That's how we did the whole 135 miles through Death Valley over three mountain ranges. Me trailing my guides, and they would rotate out every few miles. And here's the coolest part. Besides the fact that actually worked and we figured it out with crap in my bag, uh, because of that tether and having to run basically with one arm at a 90-degree angle for a decade, I developed some really nasty knots and, like joint issues, muscle issues over the years from not having a natural, gait, not having a natural arm swing. And the funniest thing about it, when we started running with it, I would literally, that was what I was most afraid of, was running 135 miles with my arm locked in position because that hurt more than what I put my feet through at Daytona. And uh, we started running with these trekking poles. And the coolest part was, because of my guide's hip motion, the trekking poles kind of moved like horizontal pistons. And I got to do more or less a natural arm swing for the first time in a decade. It was awesome. No pain whatsoever in my shoulders.
But well, yeah, everything else probably hurt. Um, so what was your lowest point at Badwater?
Oh, man, Father Crawley, the Crucible. We we set off. It was 8 o'clock on 4th of July, right? Badwater Basin, 282 feet below sea level, and we had I think it was, I forget now. It all kind of, the numbers all meshed together for me, but I had to get about 40. Was it the first checkpoint? It was 48 miles, and um, yeah, or you're disqualified, right?
Hmm.
So I was terrified, especially because, my previous finishes always being very last minute. I didn't know how I was going to do all this terrain, these mountains, So the first real test was that first time check. and we came in 6 hours ahead of the cutoff time. I'm like, that's awesome. But that's the Furnace Creek. I think that's the Furnace Creek checkpoint. And we actually were staying in the Park Hotel, the National Park Hotel at Furnace Creek, which is at the 50 about the 50 mile mark. So we had to go backtrack, start to the starting line, and then run past where we were staying at the hotel to get to the checkpoint. And we made it in such great time. My coach Lisa was like, you know what I like to do sometimes? If I have enough time, I like to just go into the hotel, maybe get a quick shower, jump in the pool. I just jump right in with my clothes on, and it feels so good. And I was thinking about that for hours through the night. Like, I'm gonna jump in that pool if I got time. And everybody's like, we're doing so great. And why don't we just keep going? Like, yeah, but pool? Death Valley, there's a pool. Come on.
Right? So,
They're like, we got it, but the thing was, everybody knew they didn't want to say it, but that first 50 miles was like Badwater kindergarten. It's so flat and so fast. And we'd done so well on it, but it kind of gave you a false sense of security. So right after that checkpoint, it just goes up. And I think that's Panamint, uh, um, Panamint Valley and that climb. And that wasn't fun, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't until we get past Panamint and the second climb was Father Crawley. And that's the toughest part of Badwater for most people because it's still really hot and it's like 4,000 feet of gain in I don't know 7 or 8 miles. And it's all these switchbacks up the side of this mountain, and you- I I've, if we're counting all my infirmities, I'm blind, I'm deaf. I get an added bonus of having a sleep disorder because of my blindness. Excuse me. And so the sleep disorder is called non-24 for short, and it just means I can't reset my circadian rhythm. So some days the clocks are just flip-flopped. So in the middle
mhm.
of the day, I'm just a zombie. In the middle of the night, I'm wide awake. And then when I lost my hearing, the added bonus gift was I lost my vestibular balance, my inner ear gyro. So I'm going senseless. But uh, the problem with that though is that like I trained, we actually get our balance three different ways. One is vestibular balance, the inner ear balance. Two is eyesight. We actually see ourselves in relationship to the world. And three is through physical contact with the world. So the more points of contact I have, the better the balance I have.
Okay.
And more sensitive the touch is in my nerves, my muscles, and all that, the better my balance is. And of course, I'm missing the other two ways to stay balanced. And the more fatigued I get, the more out of balance and more wobbly I become. So I'm, of course, tired. It's been over 24 hours or so. It's about 70, 80 miles into this race. I'm on the toughest part. It's hot. I'm going up this mountain, and each one of these switchbacks, it does like the racetrack thing where it bevels out.
Okay.
And so each time we hit a curve, it's like gravity's trying to pull me into the road. So, I don't know if I don't know, I doubt I'm the only one, but when you get to that point of absolute misery, and
Yeah.
you're looking for excuses. Yeah,
Hmm.
like I could roll my ankle, nobody would be the wiser. I was so miserable. And I got beyond that to absolute despair. Like I tell people I can pick up my feet and put them down until my veins are pumping battery acid. Like breathing fire. I do not care. I will run my feet, like the skin of my feet off, and I have multiple times. I will keep going until it kills me. Except at this moment, I could pick up my feet and put them down, but I had no control over where I put my feet when they came down. And
Got it.
I was hearing these cars just whip past me as they were going down the mountain. And they were just inches away. It felt like it, right?
Hmm.
And I'm all over the place. I could fall to one direction, fall up the switchback and roll into some dirt and just turn myself into a nasty sugar cookie. Or more likely, I would trip to my right and just eat the grill of a Volvo going 100 miles an hour down this mountain. And it terrified me. So that was my lowest point. I don't know how far up that mountain I had to call a break. I had to call a timeout. The team, huddled up. I told them what was going on, and they reminded me that my crew wasn't just there to point me in the right direction, make sure that I had all my calories and water. They were there to keep me safe. They were
Hmm.
there to support me emotionally, right? Physically safe. And I needed to lean on them. They were there for me to lean on. And they just reminded me that, this is why I do these things. I challenge myself, not so I can test myself physically, I could test myself mentally.
Hmm.
So
So,
I have a quick question. So you were saying that you hit kind of a speed bump there, and um did you lose a lot of time there? Because looking at your finish, you had a pretty stout finish, because if my memory is still there, the cutoff is like what, 48 hours for Badwater, and you finished in like 42 and some change. So it appears that you kept pretty close to that 6 hour buffer that you were talking about earlier. So it didn't really, I mean, did you lose a lot of time during that, or did you pick up time afterwards, or what did that look like?
there was trying to think. There was one point where I was starting to develop some blisters, some hot spots, and uh, we took a little extra time to sit down, change socks, get some tape on, that kind of thing. That took a little while, and there were three other uh, points in the race where they shoved me into the crew truck and gave me a 15-minute nap. Otherwise, oh, and there was, yeah, at one of those nap points, I actually got to sit down and eat a burger, which was kind of cool. So maybe all in all, about a 45-minute break here or there. But for the most part, 15-minute naps and then back on the road. We went a little faster in some spots, of course, and a little bit slower in others. But we kept, that was one of the things about that crew. They were great about keeping me on pace. And I've been told in other races that uh, I'm I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm a really good runner as to have for a pacer because somebody just, and maybe it's also like the soldier in me. Somebody says, okay, it's time to go. And I just get up. All right, let's go. No matter
Right.
how miserable I am or how fantastic that camp chair feels or what
Hmm.
how delicious the pierogies are. When somebody says it's time to go, I'm like, all right, time to go.
Right. Now, when you're at that point of despair, because it's essentially the only thing that I could describe that I could think of, what is your when you don't want to keep going and you're at that spot when, I could roll an ankle and no one would know and I can just make up an excuse and we can all go home. But what is your motivation to keep going? I mean, I know you say you challenge yourself, you want to challenge yourself to the best, but we all have that point where our bodies are saying we're done, whether it's actually done or it's our brain trying to play a trick on us to essentially preserve our life, because that's kind of what our brain's supposed to do. What do you fall back on? Is it your family that you think about? Do you pull from your military training? When things are as low as it seems that they can possibly be, what do you cling to? What brings you back and what keeps you going?
Um, my life since 2011, when the bomb blast took my eyes, I've kind of been my own case study in mindset and resilience, and I've had a few occasions where, yeah, more than a couple, where I've been feeling pretty low, and I gotta remind myself what I'm saying, right? What's the self-talk going on at that moment? What am I telling myself? And I call them my demons, right? That little devil on your shoulder, the voice in your head that says, "I can't. It's too hard. You don't have it. You weren't. You didn't earn it enough to be where you are. You shouldn't be at Badwater. You just don't have the experience. You don't have enough, you didn't train well enough. Whatever it is, I can't. Why is this happening to me? Right? It
Hmm.
should be different. All those things. And I realized that those demons, that's not external. That's me. That's me talking to myself. So all I got to do is change the language. Right? Instead of why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? And instead of why is this happening for me? Why is this happening for me so I can teach others? And if I can find a way to make it a lesson, an experience that I can share with others and help them through their difficulties. I heard this one saying, I probably read it in a meme somewhere, but it said, someday your story of struggle might be someone else's blueprint for survival.
That's good.
So, yeah, yeah. And when I put it that way, when it's put that way, that's why I struggle. That's why I look forward to the next challenge. And that's why I put myself in the bad position where, I go to bad water and I give myself a bad day, right?
Hmm.
And I'm there on the Father Crawley climb, and I'm wasted physically, mentally, emotionally. I have this breakdown, and that voice, right? Those demons in your head are talking to me, telling me, you can't withstand the storm. You can't handle it. And that's when you just got to smile and say, I've been waiting for you. I was expecting you to show.
What took you so long?
Yeah, there you are.
Right. So you wrap.
So if we were to flip the script here and say you were pacing one of us or one of your buddies or whoever, and they or we or whoever you're pacing is having that moment in that chair, what would you say to them?
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah. I was just saying, so if we flip the script a little bit and you were the pacer and you're pacing, say, like one of us or one of your buddies, and we were having like a moment in that chair, what would you say? What would you say to us or them or whoever you're pacing?
Soldier up, buddy.
I like that. It's succinct and to the point.
Listen, I mean, ultra running, it comes down to just a few things. Most of it is just math, right? Calories expend equals so much, like salt, water, calories you got to put in. And the rest of it is just in your head. Unless you're seriously injured, and everybody knows pretty well whether it's hurt or injured, right?
Hmm.
Hurt, you can keep going. Injured, maybe you should stop.
It depends on your level of stubborn, right? No.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else is in your head. So you gotta, I was talking to myself. What am I saying to myself? If I was pacing somebody else, I just say, hey, you just got to put one foot in front of the other. The rest of the thoughts will work themselves out. Who was it? We were talking about being in the middle of the night, the wee hours, those small hours before dawn. Sometimes the worst, right? It's
Hmm.
dark, it's miserable, there's no wind, no breeze, right? And you come up to an aid station and somebody says, just wait, the sun's going to come up soon and you're going to turn into Superman. Sometimes all it takes is a little sunlight, the right, right smile on somebody, the right word from somebody, and it just changes your whole frame of mind. So sometimes it's just what you say to somebody.
John is notorious in our group chats and at races that we've run together to say, don't quit in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
Make it to the next sunrise.
that's the
No.
single most valuable piece of advice I received before my first 100 miler was don't quit in the night. And generally, that's true. If you can make it through the night, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Love it.
wait till sunrise comes up because you're right. You turn into a whole different person. And once because you've made it through the hardest part at that point. You've made it through that 3 to 5 a.m. when everything hurts, you're tired, and you just want to go home and go to bed, but you've still got 20 miles left or however far. You make it to sunrise and you're just like, hey, hardest part's over. It's all downhill from here.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you rally,
Yeah.
you reach this point, you're moving again. At what point did you feel confident saying, I've got this finish in the bag?
I don't I'm not sure if I ever said that to myself. Um,
I say it when I cross the finish line, normally not before. So,
I think it was the next, like the final morning, right? You go past, you go up Father Crawley, and then down the other side, and you get towards the ghost town of Darwin. And you run past, what is that? The old Owen Reservoir, and it's just flat. And it's so funny because I've heard people talk about this, the run towards Whitney, and it seemed, I think it's called, what's it, Gun Sight Pass or something? And it's it seems like it gets further away. It's like it never, you're running towards it and it never gets closer. And a lot of people lose spirit. And it's so funny because like I don't have that problem. But we were making good time. I felt okay. My feet weren't too, they were blistered, but they weren't too bad. They weren't anything like they were chewed up in at Daytona. Man, that was bad. And we get to Lone Pine, and we're at like the last 15 miles. I got my last 15-minute nap, and then I ran the hardest half marathon in the world up Mount Whitney. But the thing was, I knew we had it already. We had so much time to get up that, but we charged up that mountain. I ran up that last 13 miles. We didn't walk. I mean, we did run, walk, but it wasn't like I sat back and just used up my remaining time. We were passing people, good runners that couldn't see what they were doing. We were passing them up this mountain, and we were in high spirits. It felt good. So yeah, I think it was somewhere around Darwin. I think it was like, yeah, we're almost there, which you never say to anybody else in an
Right.
ultra. Almost there.
Right. No. Yeah. What inspired that charge? Was it the fact that you're like, we're almost there? Let's just, is it everything hurts and I just want to sit down? I want to actually get more than a 15-minute nap. I want my bacon soaked pierogies. I want to go jump in the hotel pool. What was it that what spurred that inside you to say, let's go?
Yeah, the same thing that keeps me coming back is that I wanna be a hero to my sons. I got three boys, and I want them to be able to point at me and say, no matter what, my dad can still do anything. And yeah, I'm a veteran. Yeah, I still have this whole brotherhood of the uniform. I owe it to them to be and do my best. Uh, I have this ethical imperative to succeed. So I didn't I didn't apply for, I didn't register for Badwater to try it out.
Hmm.
I, I, I went to Badwater to finish that thing. And there was nothing gonna stop me from pumping my legs until I got to the end.
And was your family there at the finish for you?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we made it to the finish, and it was so funny because of course, I'm so trashed. I'm so out of it. And Chris Costman's there at the finish line, and he's talking. I'm not quite sure what he's saying, because there's clapping, there's people cheering, and there's a little bit of wind, and he's talking, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be holding my hand out to shake his hand, or is it like one of those awkward things where he's like trying to hand me a buckle and I'm just not getting it?
Yeah.
So, but he's just talking and talking, and like, is there a chair around here? Could give me the buckle. Let me sit down. But there's news there. He turned it into this whole uh thing where he's like, come on over here. Here's your buckle. Here's a shirt. I'm like, here, let me take the shirt. And I thought, this is like another awkward thing. Like, do you want me to put this on? I just want you to hold it up. Ah, yeah. So there's pictures, and then he asked me, um, blind deaf guys are stupid. But he asked me, so how, what did he say? Like, how was it? How was Badwater? And I'm like, excruciating?
Probably the best word you could use. So, yeah.
I don't know. Whenever anybody asks, like, so what'd you think of the race? I'm like, I don't know. Fun is never the right word, but but
No.
yeah, you enjoy yourself in this like miserable way, right? It's kind of a sadistic fun,
Hmm.
but That's the thing. It's a test. It's painful. It's miserable. You're cranky cranky for most of it. Um, but I had this just like I had an unfair advantage in my team, maybe in like the heat training in my garage. Uh, the fact that I didn't, I couldn't see how much further I had to go. So I just adjusted the pace and the time and my team, and I got to eat like I always want to eat.
Right.
Every mile and a half, I got a cookie, some Pringles, a Dr. Pepper. It was awesome. I loved it. Uh, I think, in seeing as how I'm a confectioner, chocolatier, um, I have to run because of all the calories.
Well, they say never trust a skinny chef, right? And that the phrase, I guess. No,
Right.
no. So what's next? We've got the Badwater finish. What's next on the agenda? Where do you go from here? Do you feel that this may be the worst way that I could think of to describe it, but it's the easiest way. Do you think this made you some sort of poster child for adaptive athletes to say, "Hey, we can do these things"? Um, and along those same lines, what can races do to be more accommodating to adaptive athletes?
My friend Eric Weimer, I mentioned him earlier, climbed
Hmm.
Everest, and he was coming down off that mountain, right? He was a base camper or something like that. It was just in just that exuberance of elation of having accomplished what nobody else has accomplished. And his guide, his mountain guide, took him aside and said, "Hey, don't let this be the greatest thing you ever accomplish." And of course, uh, me when he told me what his friend had said, I'm like, "Do you know of a higher mountain?" But of course, it wasn't literally like go climb a bigger thing. It was, do something with it. And uh, I use the story in my speeches when I go talk and try to motivate others through their own difficulties. And yeah, I'm looking for other challenges. One of my friends kind of volunteered me to start working towards my marathon in every state. So we're going to do a few back-to-back races here in the spring. Um, and of course, I'm looking for another long run. But uh, after Badwater, I think I'm gonna retire. I quit. I'm gonna leave him one or more. Drop the mic. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm always looking for something, and if it's like when you're especially boys when you're a kid and somebody says, "I dare you," well, you have to. Now that
Oh,
I'm an adult, they don't even have to say, "I dare you."
right.
You
There
should
is no there is
So
no triple dog dare from Christmas Story happening, and we just go do it. Oh,
no, now it's like, "So you want to do this?" I'm like, "All right." No, it sounds terrible. Well, okay.
So,
Yeah.
so fun fact, the guy who finished 4 minutes before you is from our hometown. He is 71 years old, and his name is David Jones, and he finished right before you. Like literally, he was the person that finished right in front of you by just a few minutes. So it is a very small world.
Hmm. That's awesome. Congratulations to
Yeah, I mean he I think he owns the record there. doesn't he, John? John's our historian.
He might have an age group record. He's finished
Yeah,
there like over 10 times, and he won once back in the 90s.
yeah. So he's an old pro at it. But I thought it was cool that you guys basically finished together, and he's from the town that we're in, and is acquaintances of a couple of us. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, like I
If you're
said, Ultra is a small world.
Right.
if you're looking for like another just tough event and you like to run in the heat, you should think about visiting us up here in Tennessee and running the Vol State 500K. It's a nice summer race put on by Laz.
Okay, why not? See, I I don't need to be dared.
Right. No.
I just like to give people bad ideas.
Funny story about old timers finishing Badwater. Bob Becker, the Keys 100 organizer and Daytona 100. Um, was that 2022 when he became the oldest finisher of Badwater? I think he literally it was actually a DNF by like 12 minutes or something ridiculous like that. But uh it's like the most epic DNF of all time.
Hmm.
He was like bent over, but almost like crawling up Mount Whitney, and amazing at 77 years old. And he he's like I said, Lisa Smith Batchen's student also. But Lisa is an 11-time runner of Badwater. She has 10 official finishes. On her 10th finish, she was wearing number 7 as a bib number, right? And uh, Chris Cosman, Badwater, Adventure Corps, uh, retired the bib until 2022 when they pulled it out of retirement for Bob, and Bob ran with number 7. And then last year, I guess they, they don't know what retiring a number means. They gave the 7 to me. And I thought that was kind of cool, lucky number 7. But then Lisa told
Hmm.
me all about the history of this thing. So we've got a picture of all 3 of us together with this bib. And I guess it's going back up on the shelf, at least until the next race. I don't
Till
know.
next year because they don't know how to retire.
Until the next time it comes out of retirement.
Um, now, do you hope that one day your sons tackle these things, or do you hope that they pursue their own adventures and their own challenges? Do you run with your sons? I know that you've got the 2 5-year-olds, but does the 13-year-old run with you at all?
We've run 5Ks before, and he's in cross country now. He's a little bit short to really guide me. He's a little dude for his age, but he is fast. Yeah, we call him Hale on wheels. But he is super athletic, way more like natural athleticism in him, really fast. Uh, just 6 pack for him since he was like 10. It's incredible. He's one of those kids that just picks up a racket or a bat or a stick or whatever the sport is, and he's he's like an intermediate level in an hour, right? Uh, he loves lacrosse is probably his main sport. And he just kind of drops into flow like flipping a switch. So it's really cool to track his progress in running. And yeah, he's going he's going to states and cross country already. So
Nice.
I'm really proud of
Now, do you give them a
him.
hard time if they say, hey, I had a bad day, and do you just say, look at your old man? or what do you say to them when they're, not having a great day? I mean, do you just tell them soldier up?
Well, the other thing is, I gotta keep moving if I'm gonna be able to keep up with that kid when he gets when his legs start to get a little longer.
Hmm.
Um, so I gotta stay healthy, especially the way I eat.
Well, that's all right. A little fudge never hurt anyone. So,
Mm, mm.
yeah. So I know you've got your own podcast. So in closing, where can people go to connect with you, listen to your podcast? I know you do your coaching, and you also, I believe, do real estate investment as well, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So where can people go to connect with you, social media, your podcast, all that stuff?
Well, I tell people I sell fudge to buy rentals. You can catch me on my podcast, Point of Impact with Aaron Hale. And you can contact me if you'd like to learn about speaking at uh Aaron Hale Podcast at gmail.com. And the social medias are all at A Clay Hale, me personally, Facebook, Twitter, that kind of stuff. And if you want to catch the cooking show, Aaron Hale's Cooking Without Looking on TikTok, that's at EOD Confections.
EOD Confections, which is that I know it's Extraordinary Delights, but that's also a play on your position in the Navy, or not in the Navy, when you were an EOD tech, correct?
That's right. EOD once stood for, and still in most circles, it stands for Explosive Ordnance Disposal. Of course, when we were coming up with a name for the fudge company, I was thinking about all the fun ways you could play with EOD, because when in the job, we used to say that EOD meant everyone's drunk, everyone's divorced, expert on demand. But then I thought, how about extraordinary delight?
And it stuck. And it is, I'm telling you, you've hit a home run with your fudge. It is the best fudge I've ever had, and I mean that. So, hey, Aaron, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate everything that you've shared about Badwater and everything that you've gone through and how you were able to just soldier on. So, thanks again. John, you want to, or Jason, you want to take us out? You're better at taking us out than I am.
All right, guys, that is it. We have had some great conversation with Mr. Hale tonight. As always, you can find us on all the social medias. We have I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are TikTokers now. So watch out, people. Get on the TikTok. Watch us act like fools trying to figure out how to use it. And listen to some trashy fellas talking about some running. We'll see you next week. Have a good evening.